Are you trying to ride in on the sort of Scott Brown wave, the sort of, and in other words, his election, how much of an influence did that have on your decision to run?
Yeah, well, no question. He plays a very large influence, I think, in the number of Republicans that are stepping up right now to run for state and federal office. But I feel that we're at a critical juncture right now, and we have extraordinary challenges in front of us. And we're facing monumental spending and tax increases. The largest tax increase in U.S. history is coming down from the federal government beginning in January 2011. And it's up to us to be able to compensate for what that's going to happen at the state level. Now, I'm not running for federal office, and that would entail something entirely different, perhaps on my platform. But at the state level, there's a number of things we can do. Where we have to account for a $3 billion loss in revenue from the federal government this year alone, and also in fiscal year 2012 and probably fiscal year 2013, unless the economy rebounds somewhat. And there's indicators that might happen soon, but we need some serious action right now. We need aggressive, relentless pursuit of government reforms. The Republican caucus in the House has proposed more than $1 billion in reforms over the last 2 years, and the Democrats haven't touched those. So we're talking about real money. We're talking about huge savings. We're talking about people's jobs and preventing further tax increases and crippling the real economy. Why am I really qualified to do this? Well, I've worked with a lot of the legislators on Beacon Hill, yet I've worked across party lines. And I've worked, I'm a bipartisan collaborator. I've known dozens of elected officials and worked as a policy advisor and political consultant with many people, with many elected officials all over the state. And yeah, I know what people are interested in. I know what the representatives are saying, but I know furthermore what the grassroots are saying. And I can bridge that divide. And I know what issues are important and what we need action on right now. And again, coming back to the $3 billion deficit at the state level, we're not even addressing it. We're not even touching it. And I have the energy and the enthusiasm and if I dare say the youth to get out there and do it. And this isn't about me. I quit my full-time job so that I could pursue this.
Talk about that. What was your full-time job?
My full-time job was working as a full-time policy advisor and political consultant to dozens of elected officials all over Massachusetts. And I've worked with state representatives, state senators, selectmen, city councilors, school committee, you name it. And I've worked with them on local policy issues up to the state level. And I gave all of that up so that I could run for office. I think I know what's going on out there enough to say that things are not right. We need a new direction. And I represent that new direction and that new generation of leadership.
Why did you, or how did you get into politics? I was looking at your bio, and
that's a loaded question.
And I was reading you participated in Mitt Romney's campaign in 1994. How old were you then? I was thinking,
12 years old, 13 years
So
old.
Did you always know that this is something that you were sort of destined for?
Well, being involved in politics was something that has always driven me. Even at a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be involved. And hey, Greg, what's that? Yes. Sorry to interrupt the interview.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I'll talk to you. I'll run inside. That's Greg Rigby. He's a member of the Andover Board of Registrars. He's also an active member of our Republican Town Committee.
Okay.
And like me, he represents a new generation of leadership that's based on principle and not party. But anyway, going back to your question. I've worked with dozens of officials all over Massachusetts, and I know what issues are important, and that started at a very young age. And I worked on Mitt Romney's campaign at a very young age. Probably didn't really know much about the issues, but I knew, based on my upbringing.
So I assume your parents are Republicans?
My parents are Republicans.
Okay.
Yes. And so I was raised on a number of virtues and values and principles in my life, and that I still hold very dear. And I'm a Christian, and that means that I believe in serving others and in doing good to other people and in living a virtuous life and not receiving anything in return for it. And I think those are some elements of Christianity, just as and it's also translated into my political philosophy. And I'm a principled Republican, and that's why you see on my push card here that I'm principled and independent. And on the other side, I'm a true reformer. And I really believe those things. And I'm running on principle, not party. And this is what we need now more than ever. We need people to step up and do the right thing for taxpayers, and I represent that.
Okay. What kind of reforms are you going to or do you propose to bring to the Commonwealth?
Well, I mentioned before that over $1 billion in reforms at the state level have been proposed by the Republican House Caucus. Just a couple of those. Expediting the transferring of state land to municipalities. If we can sell hundreds of millions of dollars in state land, then that'll generate so much revenue. And a lot of that's one-time revenue, but again, it's money that we're not relying on to fund a falling deficit and increased deficits. And also, we can privatize mass health. That's $350 million in savings. I mean, the Beacon Hill Institute, which is a very reputable, very known institute, along with the Pioneer Institute, has estimated up to $350 million in savings. That's tremendous. And those are consistent savings. Excuse me. Those aren't just one-time savings. And we can also fund these. We can also fund tax rollbacks of the sales and income taxes back down to 5%. Through these government reforms. And, the Republican caucus has proposed so many reforms that, that we need to take a look at. And the most difficult thing about all this is that the Democrats haven't even looked at it. All we have to do is pass these reforms. These are initial savings. And this is just barely getting started.
Is it going to be difficult for a Republican to get things done in a state that's so heavily Democratic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I will say, look, we have so few Republicans in the House right now that there's 16 Republicans and a 160 member House. I mean, we're just scraping the bottom of the barrel here. We don't really have many numbers. But I will say this: that as a Republican, I will have more influence in key House legislative committees just by virtue of being an R. And I say that because by virtue of House rules, they must place at least one Republican in every single one of those committees. And I mean, there's several, obviously, and there's so many Republicans. There's so few Republicans that they have so many opportunities. So they get drawn across a wide array of committees. There's 37 major committees in the House, and countless other subcommittees, but 37 major committees, 16 Republicans. Everyone's doing double, triple duty on all the senior committees. So you have a very junior Republican, a freshman Republican, who's taking a senior position on a committee just because he's a Republican. And whereas you have somebody like Barry Feingold or Barbara L'Italian, who's been in the House for 10 or 12 or 14 years, and they have to wait their turn in the pecking order. So just by virtue of being a Republican, I have more influence, give more representation, and it would bring more aid to the district because of my title.